Hello and welcome to Real Estate Divas. Today we are going to be talking about the basics of wholesaling real estate. I'm here with my fabulous co-host JERLEIGH Thompson, and I am KRISTIN GERST. We'll be right back after this break.
Hey you guys, welcome back to Real Estate Divas. We're going to be going over the basics of wholesaling in real estate. I know we've talked about this before, but it's one of those topics that we get asked about that's always hot as far as like people looking it up on YouTube. And I think people try to overcomplicate this.
It is. It's a simple thing. And just for everybody who doesn't know what wholesaling real estate is, it is the art of putting a piece of property, and I don't care what it is, you can wholesale anything in real estate, but you put that piece of property under contract and you go and find another buyer and get them to put it under contract and buy it from you for more money.
Exactly. Well, and so I remember when wholesaling, like just the description wholesaling first started, and all of the realtors that I'm in contact with were having a complete fit. Having a fit, like this isn't legal. We can't, you know, we've got to do everything we can to stop this. You know, they're trying to act like they're realtors, and that's not it. I mean, I think now realtors have a better idea of what wholesaling is, and most realtors don't have it in them to go out and do that job. It's not a part-time. I mean, it can start out part-time, but I'm telling you, it is a 24/7.
And for all investors out there,
yep.
You cannot spend all your time. If you're rehabbing and overseeing a flip, you don't have time to be out there sourcing your next deal that you basically have to have set up, kind of ready to go a couple weeks before the
other one's done.
Before the other one's done. And so wholesalers really do serve a purpose.
Vital.
And it's a vital purpose, yeah. And so
I mean, in the residential investing world, and really and truly in, like you said, you can wholesale anything. So it can be in the land purchases, in commercial purchases. It just depends. But basically, wholesalers, if this is your job, if this is what you've decided to do, you're out there soliciting and marketing and knocking on doors, making phone calls 24/7, trying to get that property off market.
Right. And so, and another thing that this is called, wholesaling is also called, I like to call it flipping contracts.
Yeah.
Because people are a little confused by that wholesaling term. But, just flipping a contract. Okay, you put something under contract. And I think the first time I ever fell into this, I didn't know it was wholesaling. I just knew that I had something under contract. And then I got something better under contract, but I actually wanted to rehab.
Yep.
And I couldn't do both. And then somebody said, oh, okay, well, why don't you sell that? And I didn't even know you could sell a contract, so.
Yeah, well, and like I said, a ton of people thought it was illegal. You know, I had people telling me all day long, and then I'd have to explain it to them. You don't want this job. It's not that a lot of people do want this job, but most realtors don't want this job.
Right.
You know, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
So, part one. The number one most important thing you have to know when you're starting out wholesaling or flipping contracts is the formula. And
it's not a hard and fast formula anymore, though.
I get it.
It used to be, but right now it's so incredibly.
It also depends on where you're at.
It does. It does. But it's a good rule of thumb to like a place to start. This is your starting point, and it comes down to knowing your numbers.
So the official, and I always say this, starting back, going to, 16 years ago, when I got started in investment real estate, the formula is 70% of after repair value. So whatever you can sell that property for, 70% of that number minus your repairs. And then if you are going to flip this contract, you also have to build in
what you
fee.
were going to pay. Yeah, what you want to get paid. So the 70% rule, like I have people still coming at me now saying, hey, well, I really want to do 70%. You know, I want to stick by that 70%. And I said, don't we all? I'm like, we all want that.
It's ridiculous.
But this market, as most of anybody that's out there right now, and for new people getting into this industry, yeah, well, I mean, it's really nationwide in populated areas. You know, if you're talking rural, then it's a little bit different. But in populated areas, this is really a nationwide issue. I just had a girlfriend of mine that sold her house in California. She's moving to Tennessee. She's like, the market's crazy in Tennessee. And I said, market's crazy everywhere.
Right.
But
so, you know, yes, you're seeing it 75 and 80%. As somebody who used to lend hard money, if you are an investor and you're looking to flip a house, and I mean retail flip a house, do not pay more than 80%. You are going to lose your shirt.
Yep.
You will lose. 80% is your top.
Well,
and people are doing 85.
Yes, I know. But I mean, and it's different for people who have experience in this realm. They've got their systems down, they've got their crews, they know what to expect. You know, they've got a little bit of cush there. Somebody's listing at a discount. You know, they've got their systems in place, so they can sit there and turn and burn those.
Real quick, a lot of those guys that have those crews will buy at that 85, 90%, knowing that they're not going to make a profit just to keep their guys working so they don't lose their guys.
Yep.
And lose their crews. So it's crazy.
Yes.
But, you know, at least they're going to break even. And if it is their guys, then they are getting labor. They've got labor on salary. It's not like, you know, the rest of us who are just hiring by the job and maybe hiring individual crews. And not everybody has, you know, I've got some great guys that work for me.
Yep.
And I get great pricing, you know, because they are aware of how I work and they know they're going to get paid.
Yep.
So again, for all new investors out there, though, let me caution you. You know, I know that there's wholesalers out there wholesaling above 80%, and really that needs to be the threshold. Otherwise, you will lose it. I mean, especially if you're borrowing any type of money on it.
Yeah, I mean, what it comes down to, and what we've said a million times, is numbers. Numbers. You know your numbers.
I always tell new investors, it's costs 8%. Call it 10%, but it costs 8% to sell a house.
Yep.
You've got 3% on buyer's agent fees, 3% on seller's agent fees, and then you got 2% in escrow.
And I will say, if you're paying 3% on seller fees, give me a shout. This is ridiculous.
I get it.
But you do need to, knowing that puts a little bit of cushion there.
And in this market, yeah, I would maybe agree.
Yeah.
But, you know, I've also always said, pay your realtors.
Yes, you and I have had this conversation.
I know.
And I
am
appreciate
like,
that.
I'm like, I'm going to have you list something for me. No, I'm not taking a discount on it because I actually want you to sell it.
Yep.
Otherwise, you're making, you know, $500, and then, you know, where's the motivation in that? I'm like, always, you know, compensate your people. But anyways, I digress. So I do remember, hey, Ryan, you remember that, remember when we all went down to like San Antonio for that first event you put on, how many years ago? 2 years ago or so? 3 years ago?
2018,
3 years ago now. Gosh, 3 years ago.
Yep.
Those guys down in San Antonio were getting deals at 60 and 65%.
Yeah. San Antonio, definitely, I mean, it started to, it definitely has risen since then, but I mean,
I couldn't believe the deals they were getting.
Yeah, that was incredible.
Yeah.
Because I heard about some of those deals as well and was like, oh my goodness, I need to come down and stay with some family for a while and flip some houses.
Right. And so, and when I say 60 to 65% of ARV, I mean 60 to 65% minus the repairs, the cost of repairs that are in there.
Yep.
You know, and the number one question I think I get from new investors who are learning how to wholesale for the first time, they're like, do sellers actually sell at that? Because that means they need to be selling at like 50% of what the value of the house is. And I said, they absolutely do sell.
Well, because you've got to understand that everybody's selling for different reasons, you know, and if they had all the time in the world and the house looked fine and they didn't need the money, well, then they would go ahead and list it retail. but there's something going on there that they need the money immediately, they need the cash, and they need to get out from underneath
And
it.
they don't have the money to do repairs.
And they don't have the money for repairs.
And every realtor they've talked to is going, this is never going to sell because nobody wants to come in and have this nightmare of a property to fix. And something's really, if it's got a bad foundation, the roof needs to be replaced.
Yeah,
HVAC, there's some
HVAC, yeah,
big ticket items.
just like we've talked about that. We have a whole big ticket item show, but that one really goes down like the ones that are the heavy hitters that will just knock your budgets out of the park.
Well, one thing, KRISTIN was saying this earlier about the competitive markets. Like when I started this back in early 2000s, it was 65% minus repairs.
Yeah.
And then that was the flipper model. And then as a wholesaler, you were trying to get that 58, 60
Yeah, you're trying to get it on.
to make a spread.
Yep.
And then I took a 10-year hiatus and got back in at 2012. And by then it was the 70% minus repairs. But as a wholesaler, try to buy it 65%. So that was the home investors, like beat it in your head. You got to get 65% so you could sell at 70 to 75 to the flippers. And then fast forward to today, I don't know what the hell's going on.
No, I mean, you can't. I mean, I also kind of blame the internet because homeowners are a lot more savvy. I mean,
Oh, absolutely.
And
they
they
know
can-
there's options out there. They can shop it. They don't have to just go with the first person that offers them a solution to their problem. And then also kind of like what we're doing. There's more videos out there. Whenever we first started this, as we've mentioned a million times, we couldn't just go and Google it and figure it out. Like this was seminars, this was paying somebody to teach us something, this was sitting through classes.
this was buying 10 wrong books to maybe get that 11th one that had like
a nugget. I had one nugget.
One nugget of information, but
Yeah.
you had to read 10 first to go,
Yeah.
God, these suck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Again,
times change.
that's
This is the
formula.
baseline.
This is the baseline, the formula. So
Yep.
really, I think the rule of thumb here is in most competitive markets, you try to get it for as cheap as you possibly can. But if you can stay to that, 75% right now, minus repairs, and put that under contract, you're going to be able to sell it, and hopefully you're not going to burn every bridge with everybody out there. Because once you start selling above 80%, that is not going to be a repeat buyer.
yep.
Just not.
Well, we know a lot of industries out there, or a lot of groups out there that end up. And I know you get the emails the same as I do. I get a plethora of emails, and I sign up for them. I want to know what these wholesalers are putting out there. I want to know what they're quoting as ARVs. And when I have a moment, or if I have a client that I'm working with, one of my investors or something, I'll shoot it to them in case they're not on that mailing list. If it's a valid wholesale, if it's right there at close to retail, I mean, it's trash immediately.
And this goes back to 2014, and I do know it was the Austin area, and it was one of the big companies that we don't like too much or like to talk about because they oversell and
Yeah.
oversell their properties. They actually had fraudulent comps
Yeah.
in their packet. So, I mean, even if you're an investor out there watching this, you're going to have to go through and verify the comps that are there.
I reject the premise of fraudulent comps.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to defend anybody, because I stand beside you in that comment before you said it, or as you said it. But I reject the premise of fraudulent comps because there's just right comps and wrong comps. If you're saying
Fabricated comps.
they're actually making up numbers,
They made
or
up
they're
numbers.
using
They copied and pasted and put it in there because they come out and it's like a Xeroxed copy, and they cut out like the thing and they paste it there. Literally fraudulent numbers. I went and looked them up.
Okay, so like 123 Main Street, its actual comp is 100,000. They're saying it's like $1 million.
Yes,
Exactly.
Then yes, then I
I'm-
retract my statement of
But what you're
fraudulent
to speak
comps.
to what
I've
you were
only seen that
talking
one
about-
time,
Yeah.
but I've never trusted a single packet that came
you
out of
shouldn't.
that.
You
Yeah.
shouldn't trust anybody's packet.
No.
Well, to speak to what you were talking about, I know we know what you're saying is maybe they're pulling different comps that support their ARV.
Sure.
But that doesn't exactly make them comps.
Yeah, like a studio apartment in New York going for $10 million does not affect your studio apartment in Dallas, Texas.
Exactly.
That is not a comp.
That right there is not a comp. You don't even have to go that far. A studio apartment in Fort Worth versus Dallas. You know, I mean, here we are 30 miles apart. Not a comp. So
There's even neighborhoods bordering each other,
yeah,
and they're
go
not
across
a comp.
the street and
It's
not a
not
comp.
a comp.
Yeah. So you just that's one of those. We'll be talking about those here in a second.
Yeah.
that's on down on our points.
Number one most important thing when you're going out there looking for wholesale deals, your goal is to get it really 75% minus repairs, minus your fee is what your goal is to pick that property up. Now, the art form to get you there, let's go through that. Number one, how do you find deals? Because I get that question all the time. People are like, where are you finding your deals? I have bird dogs. I have basically wholesalers who go find them for me if I want to do something. But for everybody else, I know your favorite.
Yeah. Well, the driving for dollars. So driving for dollars, it used to be super, super effective, you know, because we didn't have the internet. We didn't have auto dialers. We didn't have all this other stuff. So you were just looking for the cruddiest house in the neighborhood, writing down that address, looking up that address, finding out who owns it and how to get a hold of them and seeing if they want to sell. You know, now that process has been shrunk down so that you don't have to do that. Now, there are still properties that I drive.
I drive for dollars all the time. When I'm driving around, I look. If I see it, I drop a pin in my Google Maps.
Yeah.
And I send
Google
it to
Maps, Propelio has a driving for dollars app. The Deal Machine, Batch Driven, you know, I mean, there are apps out there that help you not only keep track of the ones that you are interested in, that you want to remember, but also so you don't repeat that street, you know.
Well, Propelio's, and I haven't tried it.
Yep.
But they have a thing where
We tried it. We tried it
but
down
we
in
tried the
Corpus.
beta. We did the beta.
Corda.
I didn't know if it was.
Oh yeah.
We did the
That was
beta. I didn't know if it like came out like officially. But
Yeah, it did.
when you're driving, you just go to the house. You can take a picture of it. You've got the address.
And you can pin it.
You can pin it, but then you can send a postcard right away, right?
Yeah, they have the postcard stuff, but then also you don't repeat. It'll let you know where you've been, so you don't repeat that
I
drive.
love that.
Yeah.
I still
And
love
then,
Well, one thing about that, because we have a very personal relationship with them, is not only does it show you where you drive, but it ages. Like it's almost like a heat map where it's like a really strong, and as the time goes on, it like thins out. So it says, oh, I should go back. I should drive that route.
go check that again.
Drive it again. Somebody who's really good about Propelio's app is Corey Thompson,
Really?
Roughneck to Real Estate. Like, cause he'll post images, screenshots of his phone, and it's like he shows you exactly how to drive for dollars. Cause it's like, boop, 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 boop.
Yeah.
And I know that sound means nothing to nobody's watching because the only
He went like this.
He went like this.
yeah, like where
With a
every
boop,
street,
boop, boop,
yeah.
boop, 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 boop. Yeah, driving up and down the
Yeah.
street.
So he's somebody to good follow.
I
for Drive for dollars.
also think driving for dollars is one of the best ways to find great deals, because it's gonna you might be shown a house that's not on anybody's radar.
Yep.
You know, so if you're not sifting through public records or all of these
Yeah, maybe
lists,
they're not in deficiency. Maybe they're not in default with any of the things
Right.
that usually get stacked in those lists, you know, as a good prospect to go after. So you could possibly be the only one after that property.
But you know, I don't use a single app, but I'm just in the habit after 15 years. If I'm driving around and I see something that's beat to hell, I write down the address and
Yep.
I go find out who owns it.
Yep.
I go see how much money's owed on it.
Yeah, when they actually took out
When they
a
actually
loan.
take out a loan on it. Do they owe a ton of money? Is there any equity? I mean, obviously, if they took out a loan 20 years ago, there's
There's
going
equity.
There's going to be some equity in that thing.
Yep.
So again, driving for dollars is a great way to find these leads.
Yep.
And the next one, Bandit Signs. Now,
Bandit Signs still work.
there's a reason why you see these signs everywhere.
Yep.
Because people call them.
Exactly.
And so if you're looking to just get started, now remember, they are illegal. And
Are you a lawyer?
no, I'm not a lawyer.
Then you should never speak on what is or is not illegal.
Okay. I can tell
some
you.
places you will get fined.
Okay, so I was arrested
I'm just trying to help you.
I was arrested by the dog catcher in Box Springs, Texas. You know this story, right? You know, so I was
It
putting
was
out
a citizen's arrest.
citizen's arrest by the dog catcher, you know? And so I am in the habit of, I was putting out signs all the time. This is like 10 years ago, right?
Yeah.
I'm driving around and I'm like, oh, I got 20 minutes to kill. Let me stick out some Bandit signs. And I'm putting a sign out, and all of a sudden, in my rearview mirror, I'm like, is that dog catcher following me? And I'm like, that's crazy. I get out to put another sign in, and the guy backs me in and blocks me from leaving. And he goes, we have been looking for you for months. He goes, we have about 200 of your signs in our storage closet, and it's a fine of $200 per sign.
Yep.
And I said, I then lied. And I'm like, oh, I'm just doing this.
I just got hired.
I just got hired. I'm just doing this for a lady. This isn't your phone number on there, which I'm like, no, sir, it's not. And I like reached down and I put my iPhone on silent. I just clicked
You
it
had
off.
an iPhone 10 years ago?
Or
when it was, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess so. I guess
I got one
I
in
was like,
2000.
wait,
I got one in 2008.
I'm splitting hairs now.
I know.
I'm just giving you a hard time.
2008. So yeah, I've had an iPhone for like 13 years, but whatever. But I like clicked it off, and he goes, he called it, and it didn't ring, and he goes, okay, I'm gonna let you go with a warning. I'm like, I never put another sign in Box Springs.
But all that to say is, yes, you definitely want to look up if you plan on using Bandit signs, which are still very effective. People drive by them. A lot of people
Friday night,
Yeah.
Saturday night.
do it at night. Yeah, do it at night. But also maybe look up what the code is in certain neighborhoods if you're kind of concentrating your efforts in one area. Because some areas, they've kind of just like garage sales or something like that. Some areas it's okay for 2 days, but it's not okay for 3 days. Some areas it's not okay at all, you know. So you just gotta, or just wing it and do a Google number, and that way
Always,
they get,
always do a free Google number.
yeah, and that way they don't get you directly.
The code does start calling you.
Yep.
And so my Google number transfer into your phone as do not answer code for whatever city. Because obviously you want to pick up your unknown numbers because you do
Yes.
want to answer your calls because somebody might be wanting to sell you a house.
Exactly.
But as soon as you know that it's like some city ordinance, then you're like, you hang up really fast and then you say do not answer.
And then maybe don't put any signs out there so you don't start racking up some bills. But Bandit signs do definitely still work. And then the other way for Bandit signs is putting the signs on your back window or on your car, because all right, that's your possession.
You can drive around.
Yeah. One of the things that Daniel did with Propelio at the very beginning, which was freaking awesome, is he started, not
this
only
story.
did he start putting it on his car, but then he put it out there, do you want to make money, you know, by just driving around, which you're doing anyway. And so he started doing it, and everybody had a different number so that he could catalog what calls were coming in. And if he closed a deal and it came off of your car, you got paid.
That's amazing.
But
That's a
then
great
you've got
idea.
all of these people running around with your business on their car, and you're not getting fined; they're getting paid.
No,
know?
and I think it's great. Yeah, and just to have, and it's all on somebody else's car because I never wanted to put,
Yep.
you know, we buy houses and a phone number on my car, but putting it, having other people out there who really don't care.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So mailing lists and postcards, this is for if you're just getting started in wholesaling, this is expensive.
Yep.
Or it can be.
It can be.
But it also does it seems to get a pretty good response. Looking at, you can really tighten up those lists to go, okay, well, I really just want something in, the county that you live in. I want something down in Harris County. And then I need to make sure that it's, they've had it forever. You can look at older homes. You can look at homes that were bought 25 years ago and older. So
Well, and not only that, but looking at pre-foreclosures and looking at all of these others and kind of make your mailing list and your mailers specific to whatever type of client you're going after, whatever type of homeowner you're going after, so that it appeals to their senses a little bit more. Whether if it's probate, then you're going to be super, super, caring and thoughtful. And if it's pre-foreclosure, then it's, hey, can I help? I can help you out of this. If it's in foreclosure, there's just all these different.
And that I think that's an excellent point.
Yep.
And there are some people, and you got to know your own personality. And some people can deal with people who are mourning the loss of a loved one and can deal with that and can talk to them.
And some people can't.
And some people
if you can't, don't go after those. Do not go after those, because you're only adding insult to injury.
And if you know you're kind of an ass,
yeah,
and you're going to come off wrong as a vulture preying on people, don't do that. As for people in pre-foreclosure, everybody who I've ever talked to about buying their property in that case, they are not sleeping at night.
Yeah.
They are desperate for a solution. And so you really have to, when you go and talk to the pre-foreclosure people, you need to make sure and say, I'm here to help. I help people that are in this situation, avoid foreclosure on their credit so that they, and bankruptcy, so that they can go buy another house in a couple of years, or rent, or do whatever they need to do. And so, if you go in there with really this, hey, I'm here to help you, you're going to have a lot more success at negotiating with these clients.
Real quick, I want to say hey to Joe and Raheem and Matt and Josh. Thanks for watching.
Matt Smith. I'm like, Matt's been watching us for years.
That's awesome.
No, I love Matt. He's great. So yeah, other lesser known leads.
The lesser known leads, divorce leads.
Divorce leads.
Yep, that's a good one.
And?
Divorce leads, the divorce leads and the probate. The probate we just spoke on, because that takes a special kind of handling, but also the divorce leads do too, and not everybody goes for that. I had somebody, whenever we did the show on divorce leads, call me from Florida and is modeling his entire business around the divorce leads, because everything else is so oversaturated. So you have, if you find these little niches then and stay in that lane, then it could be extremely profitable. One of them was water leads that we've talked about, that there's been other shows about. And I mean, there are little niche categories that are not just a list being sold to you. And so the more you go after stuff that isn't just a list being sold that everybody else can pay $20, $200 for this list, then the more likely you're going to be able to capture those
something
leads.
Unique.
Yeah.
And that you won't be competing against 10
Exactly.
other guys out there. When I'm talking about who I go and talk to, because I, right before the show, I said, hey, I just picked up 5 from a probate attorney. So I'm actually talking directly to the attorneys, and they're on the business side of it.
Yep.
They want to get paid for their services. They want to help their client, but I'm not actually talking to somebody who lost a loved one.
Exactly.
I'm not talking to somebody who, is going through a divorce.
Yeah, you're dealing with the attorney, and the attorney is like, this is the business.
For bankruptcy attorneys, because you're allowed to keep your own house, but you do oftentimes liquidate
everything else.
And so even bankruptcy attorneys would not be a bad.
Yeah, that would not be a bad niche to get into at all.
Right. So just really networking with attorneys, basically, especially if you don't want to go directly talk to somebody who is going through a bad situation.
Yep. Or if you don't have the personality for it.
Which we know a bunch of people. Cold.
But before y'all move on, going back to the postcards and the mailing list.
Yeah.
Like this is just an observation, and y'all can agree or disagree, but I think it'd be an interesting point of conversation is 5, 6, 7 years ago, I'm more like 8 years ago, postcards are king. Mailing was king.
Oh yeah.
And you really didn't have SMS, you didn't have phone calls, cold calling, you didn't have all that. And then postcards and letters got saturated.
Yep.
And then you had this birth of the hustle investors, the hustle wholesalers. And they did a lot of door knocking, they did a lot of cold calling. And you saw this lag of people no longer doing the postcards. Mm-hmm. But and this is just an observation, the big guys, the big, huge guys that are still doing like hundreds of deals a year, hundreds of deals a month, they still do postcards and they still do letters. So I think a lot, and the overall point I'm trying to make is there's such a barrier to entry to do it that it's keeping a lot of the hustle guys out of it. And they're keeping to what they know, and they're keeping to what works for them. Mm-hmm. So nobody's really getting into postcards anymore. And that's just a observation, and I could be completely wrong on that.
I don't think you are.
I also think it's cyclical.
It is cyclical. That was one of the things, because just like Bandit Signs and everything else,
all of a sudden, I've noticed this, since I got started in this. When I first started, I was doing HUD homes. Mm-hmm. And it was like a government website, because I wasn't a licensed realtor. I couldn't find it. So I'd get on the HUD.gov website.
Yep.
And I'd go see what those properties are. Well, then every investor started buying HUD homes.
Yep.
And I couldn't get a good deal there. They were going for full price, or you had to be a nonprofit agency to actually win these houses. So then I was just on straight MLS. Well, then everybody was on MLS. And then you're going through wholesalers and just finding those different ways. So a lot of that is just the oversaturation of something.
Well, in the moment that you start, so that you can really take it, to that next level of, if I'm getting a bunch of letters, I'm like, oh, okay, here we go. Everybody's back on getting letters. I do agree that, that's the more expensive. Print's more expensive, and so unless you have the bankroll, you can't get into that, But if I start seeing a lull in those cards and letters coming in, I'm like, oh, okay, everybody switched gears because this got oversaturated and they weren't getting the returns. They weren't getting the leads that they needed to get to compensate for the money that was going out. So now is a good time to start doing it. So the moment that if you have the means, then the moment that starts to lag in your mailbox, then that's the moment that you should be doing it for your business. Because that's somebody's moved on to something else. And so you'll be the only one coming in the mail. But if you don't have, since the barrier to entry there is a lot higher, I think if you don't have the bankroll for $5,000 a month in postcards or letters or whatever, then pick a smaller area and concentrate your efforts. Like we were talking, pick a niche.
Exactly. And if you're looking for free things to find leads on, just get on public records at your county courthouse and start going through and seeing what's there. And as soon as you see something that says this person's not able to pay their bills, and it could be, it's a wide range of things. There might be something out there on public records on the county courthouse that we don't even know about.
Yeah. I have a funny on that.
Okay.
And y'all can just glare at me if I'm talking too much. One of the things when I work with Tim is he showed me how he pulled a list, and he looked me dead in the eye. He's like, this is proprietary. Never show anybody how to do this ever again. And I was like, well, because he had a specific way about doing it.
Gotcha.
Because again, you pull that list.
So that being said, here you go.
Well, no.
There you go. Free.
Because it went from like 10 million to like 80,000, and that's who he postcarded to.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny, I was trying to, because Sekou was asking, how do you do this? And I was like, oh, we just go pull public records. And I'm like, I lost it. I don't know how to pull public records anymore. Like, I was just like, I know I could figure it out and Google it, but when they say use it or lose it, they meant it. Because I'm like, I did this once a quarter for 3 years. I'm all the time, and I couldn't figure out how to do it.
Well, they've probably changed the website since then too.
Oh, I used to do it by spoke.
Oh, okay.
Spoke signals.
Oh, it's
Our good friends, the Reinies. This is 3-4 years ago. We were looking up stuff, and I said, "Oh yeah, well, don't you have the entire Dallas County tax appraisal? Don't you have that in your data, like the database of it?"
Yeah.
They're like, "No." And it took me a little while to remember how to do it, but yeah, you can go to any like public records and you can download all of the data into an Excel spreadsheet, and then you can search for all the data that you want.
Or you go to a website that
Or you just
offers a
go
list.
to the website that offers a list and you pay
Yeah.
for it. But we're talking to people
But
who are
free. Yeah,
who
for
need
free. Yeah.
right? They're brand new. They're like, I am not going to be able to eat this month. I need to buy this. I need to do this today. How can I go find a piece of property? And right there, it's all at your fingertips on your computer.
Yep. If you have $80, $90 a month, though, or 7 days free trial, you can go on Propelio,
Yeah.
and they do offer several different lists for different areas. Not all across the nation, but there are several different areas, not just in Texas.
Good.
So there is that little plug.
All right, so the next
Okay.
part, how do you figure out how much this thing is worth? So you got a house and you've got somebody who's called you back and you're setting up an appointment. You're going to go over there and see it. Before you go over there and see it, figure out how much that house is worth. And that is a big mistake a lot of wholesalers make.
Yep.
You know, they just show up. They have no idea what they're negotiating on. How much is this thing? And so running comps, which now because of Propelio, how many others are out there?
There's a lot out there. There's a lot of services, and you will pay for them. Otherwise, it's going to take you more time. You can still find a way to get comps, but it's going to be pretty time consuming. And typically with these kind of deals, you don't have the time. So the barrier of entry for wholesaling can be minimal, but it's not always completely free. You know, I mean, you're either doing a ton of time or you're paying a little money. You know, there's one or the other. But there's Propelio, there's other websites out there that you can pull your own comps, that they have apps on your phone so that you can literally, if you get the email or you get, or you come across a property right then and you need to make a decision right that second, and maybe your realtor consultant is not near you or you can't get a hold of them because they're with another client or doing other business, then this is something that you can just look up on your phone, do a quick comp, and figure out, all right, this is what it would retail for. Then I can do my math and figure out what I need to offer.
Correct.
Yeah.
So once you figure out what that price is,
Yep.
then you're going to take 75%. If you don't know how to do that, multiply by 3, divide by 4. There's
Yep.
lots of different ways. Get onto your calculator. And then the next thing is estimating repairs, and we'll go into that next.
Well, and one thing I will say, since we are talking to several people who are probably new at this, you're going to hear ARV all day long. ARV, what's the ARV? That's after repair value. So that's basically you want market price. This is the retail price after repair value. Everybody's after repair value is a little bit different. How are you going to repair it? What is that rehab going to look like? Some people do bare minimum, throw some lipstick on that pig and throw it back out there. Other people really gut it and put some quality materials in.
And let's be honest, there's some people with some pretty crappy taste out there.
And then there's that.
And then it's god
Yeah.
awful.
Yeah. And one of the ways to get around, or if you're one of those people that maybe doesn't have the design flair that you think it takes, look at the homes in that neighborhood and see what the tippity top comp looks like on the interior. There's pictures. You can look at those pictures and compare and figure out, all right, then my finish out needs to look something like this. You don't want to overdo it because you may not get it back, but you don't want to go completely crazy in a different direction if this is the norm in that neighborhood. And typically it's a keep it plain Jane if you're flipping. We're talking about wholesaling, so that's not really
Right.
Yeah.
It's not our thing. But the number one important thing when running comps, apples to apples. And that means that you're looking for the exact same amount of bedrooms. You're looking for the exact same amount of baths. Square footage, I think you're at 150 or you're at...
It's about 200 under, 200 over. You want, because you want to be able to, you get it wide, you know, throw that net wide and then narrow it down as much as possible.
Is there a percentage? Because obviously if it's 1,000 square feet, you know, are you going up?
I mean, I really just think
20%?
I think of it as like, well, I mean, I guess you could think of it as 20%, but it's really, you know, you want it to be, like you said, as close to the subject property as possible, because if you're comparing something that's across a busy street in a different subdivision, and sometimes when you pull the subdivision, there's only 2 houses. Well, that's not a good enough pool. You need a larger pool. You want about half a dozen to kind of give you a real idea. Are they 1 story? What year? That's important. You want a year range, you know. If it was built in the 50s and you're comparing it to a 1980s house, that's not a comp. You know, you got to keep in that range.
And
So,
exterior.
yes,
So siding to brick.
exactly.
And another friend of ours where I had this conversation with her a couple years ago, Katie Apperson, and she had a client and they were having a hard time selling this house. And I looked at it and I said, everything that's comping in this neighborhood, it's all brick. I go, yours is siding.
Yeah.
And she goes, oh, wow, yeah. And I think they ended up bricking that house.
Oh, really?
Yeah, bricking the front of it. And they ended up getting like a ton more money for it.
Yep. Well, because here in Texas, for the most part, if it's a wood frame house and it's wood exterior, then it's going to typically, depending on the neighborhood, if you're in a super hot neighborhood like the M Streets, Highland Park, something like that, well, then those will go for what those go for. But if you're anywhere else, if it's a wood house versus a brick house, brick is always, all day, going to sell for more.
Yeah.
You know, brick and stone always. But then you go to Europe or something like that, that's not the same. They have, you know, it's different everywhere you go.
You go up to New England
Yeah,
and they've got the Cape Cods up there. Everything. There's nothing that's brick.
yeah,
You know, it's all siding.
exactly. So you just want to make sure that when you're pulling your comps, you're definitely pulling, like you said, apples to apples, comparing and narrowing down to fit that that prospective property as best as possible, so that you're not getting some harebrained, like crazy number over here because you compared it to something that is not even a comp.
Correct.
No pools if it doesn't have a pool, that kind of thing.
Right. And I always start, you know, for my search radius around it, I start at that quarter mile. And then I go out if there's not enough comps. And then
Yeah.
if I have to go out, you know, one of the major rules is do not cross
Major streets.
a major street. Yeah, if it's, you know, in the same subdivision and it's, you know, basically you can fit 2 cars on it, fine. But if it's something that's got a stoplight on it, that's a major street and you do not cross that to go get your comps.
Yeah, unless you're familiar enough with those neighborhoods that this one comps out the same as this one does. But for the most part, yeah, that is a wonderful rule of thumb. And the other thing you need to consider when you're considering comps is, are you right next to something less desirable? If you're on the outskirts of a neighborhood and you're right next to the 7-Eleven and you know you basically share a fence line with a commercial property, or you know there's a stoplight right there on the corner and you're on the corner, if yours is on the busy street and everybody else is interior, you're going to take a hit. Period.
Yeah, I agree. So again, you know, determining comps, you can, even if you are not a licensed realtor, I think I pay $90 a month for Propelio. And you just go in there, you put in your address, and then you get to look at all the different comps and you get to look at pictures of them and see that, okay, this is apples to apples, this is the same comp, and wind them
Exactly.
down.
Exactly. And there is an art to it, but you can always reach out. You know, that's what this networking is. How we always say network, network, network. The reason we say that is because that way you have those resources. You can call somebody like KRISTIN and go, hey, I'm not so sure about this. Can you give me your second opinion? You know, I feel like it's this. And then they'll give you that second opinion, but maybe it's a more experienced second opinion.
Absolutely.
All about that. So moving on to the next one, estimating rehabs.
This is
our
hard.
favorite.
I know.
It's hard to give advice on this one.
It is, because everybody is going to rehab differently.
Yeah.
But if you put on your wholesale advertisement, buy this house, you know, it's a screaming deal, 75% minus repairs, and you have it at like $5 a foot,
Yeah.
people are going to laugh. People are going to laugh at $10 a foot. You can't even get paint done
Yep.
for $10 a foot.
Yeah, so basically, I mean, one of the things that we mentioned when on the show that we did with the big ticket items is we mentioned if you don't know how to bid this, maybe you first stop before you go in there and you try to figure out what the rehab cost might be on something like blindly. You stop in and you talk to a professional at Lowe's or Home Depot and just say, hey, give me like price per square foot for, you know, your low to medium grade such and such, and what would I expect to pay for this? Jot down those numbers so that at least you have a concept and you don't automatically go, oh, this is a $20,000 rehab. This is a $20,000, everything's a $20,000, $30,000 rehab.
One thing that's interesting about that material cost increase is that you got Tony Sicilian, Sicilian Brothers. They bought a property off of Donovan Ruffin Equity Cash Partners.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they tore down the house, and there's 3 lots, and they were gonna build 3 new houses.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they were telling me yesterday, it's like the cost of
lumber
wood has made it to the point now. It's like we're just gonna sell each lot for $60,000 each.
Yeah.
And run for the hills, and it's just like and it's just insane to me. It's like they can make more money just selling the lot than trying to build. And it's all because of lumber. And there's so many funny lumber memes out there.
Yeah.
You know, like there's one where the plywood hit the car, and they were like, I would have called the insurance company, but instead I
banked.
I just kept the piece of plywood. I just kept the plywood.
Yeah, or there's the one where all the wood's outside of a house going, where's the security here? Oh my gosh, hey, make a run for it. Yeah.
I mean, that's basically because, I mean, especially in the great state of Texas, I know the Home Depot that's in my neighborhood, so I can walk to it,
Yeah.
which is awesome. I'd
like
ran
to
out.
see you carting some stuff, walking home from Home
Stiletto
Depot
heels.
with her 2x4s.
It could happen. It could
No,
happen.
I need video if it does. I need video.
So we went up there when we ran out of wood. They had sold everything that was flammable. I mean, you're talking about wood that probably been on that shelf in some cases for 5 years. And
you mean whenever the freeze happened and
when the
everybody
freeze
lost
happened, because
power?
people were destroying their wood fences
Yeah, in order to have firewood.
in order to have firewood. And so going to the Home Depot and just buying, you know, any type of plywood or 2x4s or anything that they could burn to stay warm at their house.
Yep.
So yeah, it's crazy. And now the cost of lumber and building materials, the thing that shocked me, and I just had to buy a new one, like I had to buy a dishwasher for a property. Typically for a rental, you know, stainless steel, $400 or $500. You know, that's what I've always paid. $1,000.
Yep.
$1,000, and I could not get it.
Yeah,
Same
and then
day.
the lead time was long.
Usually I could get it in 1 to 3 days, not a problem. And sometimes, you know, I'd have my guy go pick it up and he'd install it. Nope. It was 2 weeks. Absolutely insane. But $1,000 for a dishwasher. Last fall I was rehabbing that one place, and I couldn't get appliances.
Yep.
For 6 weeks.
Yep. Well, and I mean that's all. All of this is COVID related. So hopefully the price of lumber will be coming back down. But yeah, I look back and I'm going, thank goodness. Well, we were just talking before the show. Our COVID project was a big pergola. Thank goodness I bought that wood this summer. Holy cow! I would have checked it off my list.
Or sell that wood. Shit.
Or sell that wood. Yeah, you
Right?
sell it to somebody.
Anyway, but yeah, the price of lumber is outrageous right now. So these are all things you need to know. If you don't know it, then you cannot estimate your repair.
You know, a ballpark of a basic, and I mean basic right now, 25 to 30 bucks. I used to say, you know, 25 was a pretty good estimate. $25 a square foot.
Yeah.
Right? Take whatever square footage. You got 2,000 square feet. You've got $25 a square foot. That's a $50,000 remodel.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's assuming, you know, you're putting in new flooring. You're putting in probably a facelift on your kitchen.
Yep.
New appliances, all that. I'm thinking it's
Now
more, I'm thinking it's 30, maybe even up to 35.
Well, and that's the other thing that's a little, you know, a little dicey right now, is because not only are you overpaying for the properties typically, because the skin on the bone is a lot less whenever you're doing the wholesaling, is then estimating that rehab, it's a lot more now.
Yeah,
Just because of the cost of supplies.
You know, and I'm not going to hold that against a wholesaler who had accurate rehab numbers, or
Yeah.
close to accurate, decent rehab numbers 6 to 12 months ago, you know, and now, you know, they're way off by
Yeah.
10, 20%.
It's crazy. But again, that's all about educating yourself and going to the resources, figuring out where you can get the best information. Start at your hardware store. Figure out what that looks like. You know, if I'm doing a guest bath, what would you say? Just replacing the countertops and doing this, they can estimate that for you. They can give you a bare bones estimate so that at least you have some place to start.
And Google as well.
Yeah.
You know, I go, what's the cost to replace the HVAC in this zip code? So if you know about where you're at, and then they'll tell you like tonnage, and tonnage goes exactly with your price per square foot. You know, so have those numbers jotted down in a notebook. You know, keep a little, you know,
Yeah, a
notebook.
little black book that you take every time you go and view a property or meet with a homeowner.
And, you know, and pick a number. You know, is it 25? Is it 30? You know, maybe your negotiations are $30 or $35 a square foot, and your marketing says $25 a square foot. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
It happens. And again, it's not, you know, that's one of those
It's not an
things-
exact science.
It isn't, especially for rehab, because everybody rehabs differently.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody shops differently. Some people are like, no, I want a GC to do it all. And some people are their own GC, and some people are doing it themselves.
Yep.
So
Exactly.
you really can't get that number right on. So 25, 30 bucks a square foot.
It's a good place to start.
It's a good place to start.
Making the offer is the next section. So making the offer, if we go to that next point, is you've found the property, and you've got some knowledge in your back pocket of what things are going to cost. And now, and you kind of have an idea of what the ARV, you've pulled some comps in the area, so you know.
You've multiplied that square footage by 25 or 30.
Yep. So what would you suggest they do? They're showing up, they're meeting somebody.
So the one thing that I like to do, which is not on my list, the one thing that I like to do before I go have that meeting, I like to get into public records and find out how much they owe on that house. So you go, you see what they borrowed on the house, and you're not going to be able to see the exact interest rate
Yep.
or know, but you'll know the
Well,
term.
you'll know it when you go to the tax rolls. It basically tells you, look, they took out a loan for this amount on this day, so you know how long they've had that loan. You know that, you know, like we were saying earlier, if they've had that loan for 15, 20 years, there's equity there.
There's equity in there, and they
Yep.
can. And you also know, you can see that what they borrowed on it, which if they've had it 15 or 20 years, the sales price was a lot less than what it is now. So you know that there's going to be room to negotiate
Exactly.
and get in there. So I like to know that before I go in there. And then, you know, when you get to talk to the property owner, one, they don't need to be shamed. So
No.
don't shame them on their property. But ask them, are there any repairs that need to be made.
That you know of. Same as you would do, like me as a realtor, when I'm going for a listing appointment, that is one of the first questions. I was like, how old's the roof? How old is the HVAC? You know, it's a 1950s house. Have you ever updated the electrical? You know, where is the electrical panel? Where, you know, these are all things that you need to kind of be aware of, and you want to make note of, and you want to take pictures of.
And there's no reason to go and shame them over their mustard yellow appliances in the kitchen that don't work. They know what they have.
Yep.
They know that needs to be replaced and updated. And you don't even have to phrase it.
That's the reason they called you.
Exactly. They know they can't sell the house as is.
Yeah.
And they know that they don't want to spend the time or the money to replace it.
Yep.
So by asking them questions about the condition, you will open a dialogue, and they are going to admit,
a lot.
yes, it needs work. Oh, yeah, the roof is bad. Oh, gosh.
We have foundation issues.
And they know all of this stuff. So when you're starting to make that offer and negotiate with them, ask questions and get them talking.
Well, and one very good point is always show up with your tools. And one of those tools is the contract. Always have a contract. Don't say, I'll email it to you. I get it. It's easier. I love electronic signatures. Have a contract, because you want to be the one they sign a contract with.
Right.
And if you don't have the contract, they can't sign it then. So the guy behind you or the guy behind that, they'll come in and they'll sign a contract with them.
And it's quick.
It's quick.
There was a house, it was way back when I worked with Tim, and Jason, Ryan, and we had a deal locked up. They're ready to go. It was our first appointment. It was like 3 blocks away from 1795, but this was like at 4 o'clock. But what was going on that night is, and this is not to shit on Tim, but Tim was speaking at an event that night. So obviously we had to hurry back and get to his event. So we're like, well, we'll email it to you later tonight. Got back to the office, went to the event, came back, emailed it to him, and the guy was like, "Oh yeah, somebody showed up like 30 minutes after you left."
Unreal.
And inked that up, and we lost what, 20 grand just because we didn't have a piece of paper with us.
Yep, that is part.
There was a handshake. There was a handshake.
You agreed. But at that point, you know, unless there's a signature, you got nothing. You got a whole lot of nothing.
So do you ever leave a contract with them?
No, I'll email it to you.
Sure. But if they don't sign it with you right there, most of the successful wholesalers that I know, they would never leave a contract.
Yeah.
They just don't leave that. They don't. They don't want the next person in to come in and
I can beat that. I can beat that by $1.
Right.
No. So yeah, you want that signature, and you want it then. You're there to do a sales job. You are there to sell them on using you, and that's one of the things that takes some practice. It takes some finesse, but you're there to sell them on using you, and bringing that contract, taking pictures. What else would we consider tools? You want maybe some measuring tape. Flashlight, yeah. If electric isn't working in certain places, or, you know, a lot of times in older homes, the garage light has been out forever. You can't see anything, but you need to for this.
Right. And so for all of you new wholesalers out there who are sitting there going, but I don't have any money, how do I get this under contract? You have to remember that these homeowners don't know what they're doing either at all. And it's very easy just to skip over the earnest money portion, you know, and go, oh, we do a $10 option fee. That's pretty standard. Are you okay with that?
Well, and just to put it a little differently, because, you know,
you have a license.
I have a license.
I don't have a license.
But even as a licensed professional, I can say that I can get something under contract. if you sign this today, I'll get it under contract. We have to exchange some money just to make it, there has to be an exchange just to make this contract go into an effect. But that could be $10. If they want to use me, then they want to use me. If they want that price, then they're going to use me. So that's the selling point is, one, I will close, you will get money in your pocket immediately. And it's not so much about, it's more about selling, this is the money that you're going to get, and you're going to get it next week. And we're going to sign this contract, and you want to use me because you trust me.
Right.
Yeah.
And, I've heard of other wholesalers, Ryan, I think you know who I'm talking about, that he actually has a check written out that says like 1,000.
Oh, yeah.
You know who I'm talking about, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And he walks in there and he's just like, he's got the check.
Oh, you don't want this thing?
$1,000, he lets them hold it.
Yeah.
And for him, once you've had a bunch of success and $1,000 putting it there,
It's not that big a deal.
you've got a huge buyer's list that you're going to unload this while you're still sitting in the driveway out front.
Absolutely.
Yeah, $1,000 is nothing to risk. For brand new people, yeah, you want to try to get out with no money or little to no money, $10.
Yep. Just to get it under contract. You're not saying I'll buy your house for $10, but
No.
to get them to sign the contract and to make that contract be hard, then you go ahead, here's $10 and here's in a check form, so you have documentation of it. You're not handing them a $10 bill. There needs to be somewhat of a paper trail, but that's what we're saying. But yeah, Dan with that whole, so you don't want to sign this? Well, then let me take that back. Let me take that check back.
And he is successful.
It's smooth.
It is.
Because once you have that check, once somebody who needs the money and needs an out has that check in their hand, you don't want to let it go. You're like, oh my gosh, I could right this second, I could do this, all of a sudden it's spent and it's still in their hand, It's a nice tactic.
Always like that one.
Yeah.
And also when you're going in to negotiate, I always give options.
Yep.
And giving them options, and again, you're going to steer it in the way you want it to go. But I give them two. One, to take over payments. So, if they're not thrilled with the seemingly low cash offer, going in and say, well, I can also take over your existing mortgage and, then I'm going to fix it up and sell it off. This is just another way to do it, like picking up that property subject to. But giving them both ways, typically they go for the cash.
Yep. Well, in the subject to, obviously, if that is an option that you're going to give, then you need to educate yourself on what subject to is. Watch one of our videos, somebody's video on subject to. Yeah. But subject to is a fantastic option.
It is.
Yeah.
And going in there and giving them an option, going, okay, we can do it this way or this way. What are you happier with?
Yep.
And then they're like, well, okay, I'm happier with this.
Yeah,
great.
it's
Well,
a choice.
Let's write it up.
Yeah.
They at least feel a sense of empowerment.
Yeah,
and
a little more of control of their situation, whereas right at that second, they're not in control of their situation because things are probably fairly dire.
Right.
Yeah. The next thing is finding a buyer. So I just got started. How do I find a buyer? It is so much easier today than it was, 10 years ago. I hate that we keep going to the flashback, but it's amazing how much easier things are today, as far as this whole process goes. But yeah, I need to find a buyer. It's called social media.
Just post something on any random group. I have a house for sale. It's worth this. This is the ARV. This is what I'm selling it for.
Exactly.
You'll have 300 people in your DMs.
And just like that, you'll have a buyer's list.
Right. And that really is the important part of that. Don't recreate the wheel every time.
Yeah.
When you're starting out wholesaling, okay, this person was interested in a property and, write down, okay, they were interested in this city at this dollar amount. Mm-hmm. And keep a list. I mean, I have humongous amounts of buyers lists, in Excel spreadsheets. And I know exactly what they want because down the road in the future, I might have the exact thing that they're looking for.
Exactly.
And if you don't and if your potential buyer doesn't like it, ask why. and then make notes all over the place. So again,
So again, yeah, just go out there, put it out there. You will have somebody that wants to pick it up, especially if you are actually getting it at a discount.
if nobody buys your property today, it's because you've paid too much for it and it's too expensive.
And even then, I'm surprised if you don't get a buyer, really and truly, right now. Right now, it's just crazy. So then if you're still apprehensive, let's say you get it under contract or you have a hot lead and you're just not sure, you want some help from somebody who has more experience, you can reach out on some of these. There are some great real estate groups out there in the DFW area for sure, but if you're not in the DFW area, I mean, look at Facebook, just search for real estate groups in that area, join them, and you can say, hey, I have a lead on something I'm looking for. Make sure you check references because there's a lot of shady stuff. We've talked about that before. There's a lot of shady business, but look for somebody who is reputable who would partner with you on the deal and
Right.
kind of hold your hand through it, and then you split the finder fee, basically,
Especially
the wholesaler
if you,
fee.
especially if you have a short fuse on
Yeah.
it. You know, if you know, oh my gosh, he said I can do this, but I've got a week. I want to find the right buyer for that very quickly, and you're nervous and you're freaking out. You know, an experienced wholesaler is going to have a great list and probably know the one phone call he needs to make
to get it sold.
to get it sold. And so it's not a bad plan to do that. When you are, though, contracting these, and this is an old rule, I always say earnest money you can get back, at least in the state of Texas.
Yep.
And I've had people who are like, oh, I want my earnest money back. And they absolutely were out of the contract time. Absolutely. And I'm like, no, you don't get it back. And then what they do is they hold your property hostage. So you can't sell it to the next person. They're not going to close on it. They can't.
Yep.
But until you release their earnest money to them, you're not going to be able to move forward and sell that property. So knowing that, I always take an option fee. I don't even mess around with earnest money. I don't care about
Well,
it.
and I get that. I will say that pretty much right now, and I know it used to not quite be as bad, but across the board, I would say 99.9999. I mean, there is a very small percent that will even allow you a due diligence or option at all. You're making that decision. It's $5,000 to put it under contract, period, end of story, non-refundable. That's it.
Make your decision.
Yeah. So when you put in that contract, if you want it to, if it's a, you know, if they're putting in a contract and they want it to be the winning bid, they know they got to cough up the cash as soon as you accept their contract. And they are not getting that back no matter what they find out about the property.
And it is very important to say that.
Yep.
Just put, and I mean, I even write it in special provisions. Remember, I am not a realtor, not a licensed realtor. So I take liberties all over the place. But I will write, you know, $5,000 is non-refundable. Underline it. I
Yep.
make them initial it,
Yep.
you know, so that everybody knows. And, you know, you're not, and I also don't say that that property is sold until you have non-refundable money in hand.
Exactly.
Because you don't want them, whoever this is, to be a daisy chainer
Yep.
and then to go put it under contract with no money and then try and go find a buyer somewhere else.
They'll pay a little bit more so they can get that's basically, in case you don't know what a daisy chainer is daisy chain means I'm going to tell you, hey, Kristen, I'm going to buy that property. Yeah, I'll sign the contract. I don't give her any money. I turn around and I go to my buyer's list. I add $5,000, $10,000 onto whatever that price is, and then I sell it to them. And they sign a contract with me, and that's the daisy chain.
And right now I know there's somebody out there who just heard you say that and they're like, well, shit, that's the stuff I need to be learning.
Right.
I don't even have to go find a property. I can just take somebody else's property and add $5,000 to it.
Well, and now a lot of wholesalers have gotten really, really smart to that, and they don't allow any daisy chaining. I do still see, in fact, I just saw one this last week whenever I did a check on one of the wholesalers that sent me an email, and I said, oh, well, I think this might be in an area that I'm interested in, and I took a look at it, pulled the comps. That property is on the MLS under contract with a realtor So the realtor listed the property, a wholesaler got it under contract, and now that wholesaler put out an email saying, I'm selling that property for more than what it was listed on the MLS.
Wow.
And so that's a daisy chain. You know, it's not quite the same, but it's still, it's basically adding fees to a property because there is a spread there, and that wholesaler thinks they've got a buyer's list of somebody who will go ahead, and I'm sure somebody will go ahead and buy that property. But I guarantee you that that seller does not know that that wholesaler is not the one closing on that property.
Again, I was doing that a ton back in 08, 09.
But
because
there was
that
more meat on the bone then.
Oh, there's tons.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was over with My Fast Home Buyers, Eric Badawala, George I. Brewer, and we were going and seeing 40 to 50 foreclosures a week on MLS, putting them under contract, and then wholesaling them.
Yeah.
You know, for a lot more. In some cases, you know, $20,000 more, but we never did it above list.
Yep.
So, I mean, I guess you can do that now. So, more power to you. If you find something that's undervalued on MLS, just paying full price for it and then selling it at a premium is not a bad idea.
Well, and like I said, it's still on MLS as pending, and so it hasn't closed.
Well, and a savvy investor doesn't want to buy something that's on market anyways. They want an off-market deal that isn't going to show up, you know, for the appraiser when they come to appraise their flip.
Exactly.
But just remember to make sure and get your non-refundable deposit. Make sure it's papered everywhere that it's non-refundable. And, you know, if they're not willing to put up, $5,000 is standard.
It really is.
And if they're not willing to put up, if I'm getting the thing for nothing, I've done a $2,000, you know, non-refundable deposit on it. That's fine. But if they're not willing to put up some serious money to take that down and close on it, then that's not a real buyer.
Exactly.
And
that's somebody that's most likely trying
to sell it to somebody else. So just move on. You know, don't waste your time, because really you don't have much time to waste when you're doing something like this, because you're saying all cash.
Yeah, you're
So
saying,
you should be
and you've got it. It's definitely time restricted. It's time sensitive, because when you submit that contract to that seller, you have put on there, I will close by such and such date, all cash, whether you have it or not, because you know you're going to turn around and sell it to the buyer, the end buyer, the investor, the whoever on your buyer's list. That timeline starts ticking the moment that ink is dry. So you are on a restricted timeline.
How much time do you ask for on those contracts?
I think it really just depends. You know, I mean, it depends, because I try to base it on what are the seller's needs. You know, do you need it tomorrow? Do you need it yesterday? Do you need a little time to gather yourself? You know, can you give me 20 days? Can you give me, you know, it's all negotiable, just like anything that we do in real estate. It's all negotiable.
Yeah.
But I really try to base it on whatever the seller needs are.
Yeah.
Without stressing myself out.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, if you're going to say, hey, I'm going to close in 48 to 72 hours, unless you really have somebody, or you're closely working with somebody who's buying these properties, I wouldn't, you know, commit to that.
No.
Try to get yourself as much time on that contract as you possibly can.
Absolutely.
2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Should be doable.
So then we're moving on to closing. So closing, pick an investor-friendly title company. That's all I can say. Google it. Go into your social media. Ask in the real estate groups who is a good title company that is investor-friendly in such and such area. I guarantee you will get like 10, 20 recommendations.
Because you need somebody who knows the difference between a double close and an assignment.
Yep.
And an assignment is a usually one page form. The one that I created for myself was 1 page. Google assignment of contract, and you'll get tons of examples. Type your own up. And basically it just says, oh, I am assigning this contract for the property at this address for a fee of $10,000.
Yep.
Whatever it is. And that gets attached to the contract, and then the title company closes. You don't have to bring any money to the table for an assignment of contract. They just cut you a check at closing.
That's what you want. That is what you want. Well, and just to backtrack just a smidge is whenever you go in there and you get that seller to sign that contract, that's what you're deciding is you're deciding what your fee is. Once that contract is signed, you're adding your fee, and then that's what you're turning around and selling to your buyers. It's whatever you have it under contract for, and your $10,000 fee, your $15,000 fee. Heck, I have heard of a $300,000 fee on commercial property. I mean, it just depends on the property. But you put in that on top of whatever you've agreed to pay, and that's what you're selling to your buyers list.
And if you have something, I used to say $5,000 was the limit, but I think it's more like 10 right now. If you have a fee that's over that, you need to be doing a double close. The double close is where you write a complete new contract, and you have two separate HUD-1s where the seller has no idea that you have sold it to somebody else, and the buyer has no idea what you paid for it.
Yep.
Because almost everybody is going to tell you, I don't care how much that wholesaler made on that deal.
But they do.
But they do.
Yeah, they do.
I actually don't care what my bird dogs and wholesalers make on stuff. If it's a good deal to me, it's a good deal to me, right?
Yeah.
But I've also been doing this for a while. There's a lot of people who will be pissed off and will spread your name around.
Yeah.
You know, so-and-so just ripped me off. You know, they made $75,000 on this property. Don't do that. Don't be greedy. You can go to... Most hard money lenders will do something called bridge lending, where they will fund your double close for you for like the cost of like 1%.
Yeah.
So if you're making 20% on this deal, you can afford to pay 1 or 2% to a hard money lender to fund that, so that both sides have no idea how much you made on that deal.
Well, and that's just one of the tricks of the trade that not everybody knows about. But it's a good point. Definitely a good point.
Well, a lot of people are out there going, well, I don't know the difference. You know, what's a double close? What's an assignment?
Yep.
But that's your different assignment. Everybody's going to know how much you made on that deal. Double close, you're hiding that fact so that people aren't pissed off at you.
Yep.
When they found out you made $300,000, or they paid $300,000 too much for that deal.
Well, and I mean, the one that made the one that I know of that made the $300,000, they weren't pissed. They were just like, wow. I mean, I still think it's a great deal at what I'm buying it for, but holy moly. Yeah, you just made bank. But yeah, there's a little, I mean, I'm sure it sticks in there.
Yeah.
So that about sums it up, though. I mean, those are all the steps. We kind of gave you 1 through 7 of what to do start to finish as far as wholesaling. There's little nuances in each one of those categories, but that's the basics.
Yeah, and just, you know, don't be afraid to get out there and try it. And once you find yourself with a property, if you're really stuck on, oh my gosh, what am I doing now?
Yep.
And you don't want to screw it up, yeah, find
somebody to partner with. Find somebody. There are plenty of people out there that would be happy to do that for a fee. Don't think they're going to do it for free, but they will do it and partner with you for a fee just to walk. And that's again, we've talked about this time and time again. That is the price of education in any field.
Yeah.
So get out there and try your best, figure it out. If you have any questions, please holler at us. If we can't help you, maybe we can recommend somebody who does. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're really trying to build this up. I'm JERLEIGH Thompson with Texel Real Estate and Real Estate Reformation.
And I'm KRISTIN GERST with Capricorn Mortgage Investments.
And we are the Real Estate Divas. Thanks for joining us.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.